All right, the Moto Dad podcast, show number 1. And we have a professional on our hands today, Ronnie Stewart, but he's allowed to drink. So Moto Dads, we talk about dirt bikes and we drink beer. This is what we do.
Here we go.
Now, you are not a Moto Dad yet. But do you want to be a Moto Dad? I mean, you've grown up at the track. You've seen the Moto Dad culture. Do you want to be a Moto Dad?
Yeah, I for sure want to be a Moto Dad, but there's certain facets of the Moto Dad that I don't want to be. So I'm excited. My boy is 15 months, and it's a little early yet, but we're looking forward to years to come when we get him on the bike.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to get into that. Let me just start with kind of why I'm doing this show. I listen to podcasts all the time. I love it. I love the education aspect of it. I love the conversations. I love the stories. One of the guys I look up to is Daniel Blair. And when he talks about his stories with Evan, his son, and going to the races and the things that they go through, because, Evan isn't exactly the most competitive on the national level, but the stories they have together and racing and riding, and, it just kind of sparked in me the drive to want to do something and talk to, other guys in the industry, other Moto Dads, other Moto families, racers, whether it be a professional racer like you that has been there and done that. So for me, this is about education. I want to hear those stories. I want to get down to the bottom of what makes, a Moto Dad a true Moto Dad, because there are a million right ways to do this sport. But as you just alluded to, there are a million wrong ways to do this sport. And I get asked all the time through my son's social media network, through, people that I know in person, like, how did you do it? How are you doing it? Well, I can tell you how I did it, but there are a million ways to do it, right. And do it the right way. So that's kind of the driving force behind the Moto Dad show. I don't know where this goes. This is show number 1. It could be one and done. It could be we don't even post this. We'll find out.
Yeah.
And just like you alluded to, not wanting to be a certain type of Moto Dad. Another thing is we have a habit in this sport of making fun of the bad Moto Dad, right? So we make fun of them, but we never do anything to really right the wrong. Like, there's no educational pieces out there for how to be a Moto Dad and how to do it and how to add to this sports culture in a positive way, instead of how some of these families are adding to it in a negative way.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I want to first throw out there that I hope that the show is not a one and done, because I think it's great, education about the sport, the more media outlets in a positive way, the better. I always talk, to my students and my network on how important it is to be an advocate for the sport. So, no matter what type of business it is, the best type of advertising, hands down, in my opinion, is word of mouth. And, if we take it amongst ourselves to really, see that, goofy looking vehicle on the side that has no idea, they don't come up all set up. Maybe they're brand new. They don't know where to park. They don't know what to do. Yeah. They don't know what bikes to buy, helmets to wear, where you get suspension, all those things. Be friendly, be advocate for the sport, and, we'll kind of maybe dig into that a little bit too here.
That's awesome. And, so how I kind of want this to go is we have a good platform that we want to push this out on. My son has a social media reach that is very strong. So I want to use that platform for this as well. Awesome. So I do want to start these shows off with a quick update on Travis and his racing, and how things are going there. We just came home from Minios.
Cool.
And man, what a culture shock with him. I've been to Minios many times, many years, but never with my family. It was incredible. Incredibly expensive to do with a family. I mean, we probably had $4,000 or $5,000 wrapped up in it.
Oh, really? That much?
That much. And it was a shock to these kids' systems too, that every day is a race day. It's stressful. It's fun. I will say, he rode well, qualified for one of his mains, awesome. And then went out and kind of play road. Had it good. Travis is a different type of rider. He's very solid. He's always in a good position on the bike. He doesn't really care where he finishes. Like, as long as he gets a good start and he's going out there doing his butt whips and looks good, like he's having fun. Have you ever been to Minios?
No, not the actual Minios race.
Have you been to Gatorback?
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you think of the outdoor track? I mean, that's scary for me. Like, even walking it, you're like, what do you think about that track?
So that track is exciting and terrifying all in one sentence for me. I feel like it has it reminds me a little bit of Glen Helen, where it looks super fun, but it has these claws, not a white claw, like these claws that can just come up and bite you. Weird. The dirt is that limestone, and it has weird square edges, and it could be tacky, it could be slippery. It's a very challenging track. Yeah, you got to stay on your toes.
Well, that for me might be kind of my proudest moment of the whole week, is that he went out there and rode, probably six motos on that track, and was finally getting it at the end of the week and never crashed once.
That's awesome.
He rode really good, was never nervous about it. He never sat there and said, I don't want to do this hill, or I don't want. He just went for it. Again, didn't make his main events in the outdoors. He was 2 spots away in the LCQ, but he had so much fun. What I will say about the Minios down in Gatorback, I have spent a lot of money and done a lot of vacations with my kids. We've gone to Disney. We've gone to national parks. We've spent tons of money on tropical vacations. This was the first time we ever left a vacation, and my son cried for a solid half hour because he did not want to leave. That, to me, just says
you did the right thing. You're in the right place.
They say Loretta's is the ultimate vacation, but man, Minios, I haven't done Loretta's with my family yet, but Minios was the ultimate vacation for us. My kids enjoyed every single moment of it. Yeah, there's over 6,000 entries and it's chaos, but it's absolutely organized chaos, and they did a hell of a job with it. So.
Speaks volumes, the numbers that they pull. I mean, it's a nice time of year, Florida, and the weather usually is nice at that point, and the crowd that they've been bringing the last 2 or 3 years, it's obviously it's a lot of fun. And to your point about the journey, it's really at the end of the day all about the journey. There's so many different ways to do the sport the right way, the wrong way. There's every different level, whether you're out there having fun in 20th or whether you're trying to win not everybody can win the title or win the race. So it's about your specific journey and the camaraderie and the memories that you make. It's not always about just the gate drops, like you guys spent a week down there, you were all together,
and from the moment my kids woke up to the moment they went to bed, they were with their friends from around the country, right? I mean, these kids come from around the country, and they are automatically brought together by, a dirt pile and some toy dirt bikes and this atmosphere. And to me, that's what it was all about. And that's what it will always be about, is being in this group, with this group of people that are like-minded. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The motocross track is the only place that I can go to where there are 10,000 people and I will let my kid out of the truck and not see him
Right.
for 4 hours, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only place in the world you can do that.
Yeah.
You know, it may be a little trusting, but for the most part, I know
Yeah,
he's
for the
with
most
good
part.
people. But yeah, so that's it. Mini-O's in a nutshell. Crazy, wild time. Travis rode good. We had no major crashes, but it was
Cool.
fun, man. It was a good time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did see some of the posts that you were posting. It looks like you guys had fun.
Oh, it's
so,
a good time. It was a good time.
It's cool to see some of the other, Mainers too. We're from Maine, but we're going to be putting it out to the country. But it's cool to see the local guys down there too.
Hey, Maine showed up,
Yeah,
and Adrian Mayo went out in some of the C classes, and he was a top 5 rider all week, which is incredible
exciting.
on a main stage. We had Forrest McPherson, little 50 rider that went out and was pulling hole shots over Jaden Smart. It's the fastest kid, and leading him for a few turns, and then battling and dicing with him. Sometimes the whole shot's what it's all about, man. Get some of that racer TV time and have some fun. And yeah, it's really cool what New England is doing. And this is, I do want to eventually get national with something like this. That would be really cool. But I have a passion about New England Moto. I always have. Spending years of my life going to races and always looking on the results sheet. Who's from New England? Okay, New England. Where, who's here? And it was always that's where my eyes always went, looking for Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, so
that's cool.
Well, let's get into this. Ronnie, you are a USMCA coach. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Coaching that the work that they're putting in and that you guys are putting in on the ground level is amazing for this sport.
For sure.
You're a pro racer, so raced some supercross last year. Did you race any outdoors?
No, not this year.
Yeah, that's scary. I agree with your decision there. What's the plan this year?
This year I'm going to transition to focus primarily on the coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I am gonna. You'll see me at a few races. Nice. Specifically Daytona. Going back to nationals, I haven't raced nationals in a few years since 2017, but I do want to get back to doing some of the fun ones, some of my favorite ones. Supercross in general, it's more of an all or nothing type of discipline. Everything has to be firing on all cylinders and right. So, I as far as I may string together a few of them, but Daytona is definitely on my radar.
That's awesome.
For sure.
That's a fun race, huh?
But going back to it's a fun race. I call it the Catalina wine mixer Supercross.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Some people love it, some people hate it, but I'm going to try to focus on the training and ramping up that. It's something that I've been doing pretty much my whole life since I was 17. I'm 31 now, so I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
And love to do it. It's fun.
That's awesome. And along with being a coach, a racer, and a rider, you have a 1-year-old Easton at home.
Yeah.
And he's getting around. He's walking around. What are your kind of hopes and dreams with him? Because we all have it as a moto dad. Doesn't matter if you've never raced before, or if you've raced casually like myself, or if you're a pro racer. You always, when you have your son, right? You find out it's a son. What is that initial dream for you?
So I have mixed feelings about your mind kind of goes all the way, like from start to finish, right?
Yes,
all the way up to, is he going to race pro? Is he not going to race pro? Like, what's he going to be like at it every step of the way? Back it up a little bit to currently, or actually even before he was born. A funny story my wife and I were talking about this morning. She was due at the Racer X main event.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't race it that year because I was just like, he's probably going to come out, whatever. And my dad was there. He was racing. And we were joking. We had our rig right on the side of the track, and the 50s were out there. And we were like yelling, Easton, go, and we were...
That's funny.
kind of starting to make fun a little bit of the serious moto dads,
Yes.
We're going to sell this dang truck if, but we were having fun, and I think we scared him in because he took another week to come out. But
that's awesome.
Moving forward, I try to introduce him to, he seems obsessed with it, as far as we could tell, even though everything is dad at the moment. He looks at pictures and the bikes, and he knows what sounds the bike make, which is cool. And I try to introduce him to, quad rides, and, he has a little Strider, since 6 months he was rocking the thing, and I wheel him around. So, I'm definitely going to introduce him to it as quickly as possible. I think it's important just to, for a kid to build confidence and have that type of athletic coordination. I think no matter what, it'll translate into other areas, later on in life, driving a car and things like that. So I'm pretty sure he's going to love it, and as far as, moving forward from there, I will support what he wants to do. I'm not going to force it on him, but I will, support it. I hope he's not super obsessed with it. Like, for me, I was super obsessed with it. It's like anything you want to do. I want him to be well-rounded, individual. But I hope he enjoys it.
There's a couple things you alluded to in there. One quick cool story. That year at RacerX main event, we were flying to Mexico, one of our expensive trips that we take with the family. So we couldn't do the race. I got a call from Danny and his brother Billy. Sipes was coming and bringing his boy, and they needed a bike. So the bike that sits right there. That was the bike that cool. Jackman Sipes went out and did his first ever race on.
Super cool.
So that's the bike right there. There's some history in that bike. Jack Sipes' first race was at that main event, and I believe there's a couple other kids that did their first race on that bike too. So that's a piece of history, piece of Patrimoto history.
Can't sell it, keep it.
No, that one stays with us forever. I will tell you, the first PW50 will stay with you forever. Yeah. You get attached to it. Every other bike we've also owned, I'm attached to, but my wife won't let me keep. But what you alluded to is really what I would call step one in this introduction phase. Because again, people reach out all the time. How do we get our kids into racing or riding two wheels, right?
Right.
Step one is this awesome invention that they came up with, this Strider bike, right? So my son, we got him one before he was even one. He refused to ride the thing, but he would push it down the hallways. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was like, whatever, my wife was like, oh, he's got to ride it. It's like, no, let him be comfortable with two wheels. And what you also alluded to with that is what it did for him beyond that. So at 2 years old, he's obviously riding this Strider bike. He's comfortable. He's, whipping through stuff. We took him skiing for the first time because we're a big ski family too. We love skiing. I put him on these skis, and with my daughter, it was a couple of days of skiing before she got it. We took one run, and I kind of let go of him for a second because I was just kind of testing him out, and he held himself up. And I was like, okay, well, that's a little weird. So the next run we went up and I let go and he skied. Like there was no teaching him. All I did was teach him like the snowplow thing. And there was anything beyond that was done. And I had an instructor about a year later tell me that he attributed that ability to this Strider bike. Because once you get down this balance thing, it does everything for you, right? So for skis, for two-wheel, for anything, like other sports that he's started to pick up, I feel like his balance has been really, really solid because of this Strider bike. So that is the start of everything, is the Strider bike,
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I mean, the motor skills, learning, just simple things like we were in Florida over the weekend, and we were on a quad, and I said, put your hands on the handlebars, and he knows what that is. Yeah. And he's, his hands are like way out here, but just riding the Strider bike, it's like he knows, okay, what's a handlebar?
Yeah.
What does it do? You know, you pick it up, it goes back down, or when it's on the rocker,
Yep.
you know, he knows how to rock it. He even puts his feet up on the
Oh,
seat.
Yeah. I've seen. I tracked down some videos of him. That you guys got posted, and he's a little freestyler for sure.
For sure. It's freaking hilarious.
And now a step beyond that are these Stasic bikes. Have you gotten one of these yet?
Not yet.
They're expensive and they're terrible to work on, but you're gonna have to get used to it. I've replaced 3 transmissions.
Really?
I've replaced chains.
Oh.
Once they get this Stasic down, right, which is a Stasic is an electric kind of strider. It's got a motor.
Yep.
They make 2 different sizes right now, a 12 and a 16. But it teaches them throttle control. It teaches, and there's different settings on it. But once they get that down, they just pound it. They pound it into the pavement, and it's cool. It's fun, but you're working on them all the time. We blew a transmission in one of TJ's buddies down at Minio's. The guy that we're staying with down there has every single part imaginable for every single one of his bikes in his trailer. There was a new transmission in this Stasic bike within 20 minutes.
Get out of here.
So you want to talk moto dads, and this is where it gets to. You know, you do the Striders, you do the Stasics, you start doing these little races with them, right? Because what we did, how we started was we were driving through Pennsylvania and we saw there was a BMX race that night. So we stopped into this BMX race thinking, they have a Strider bike thing. Let's try it. My son was 3, 2.5. So we were there early. We're hanging out. And then all of a sudden people start rolling in. Well, my son is in his PJs with a Cars helmet. You know, like we're a moto family, but I don't care what we look like, right?
Yeah.
He's wearing a Cars helmet and he's got his little Strider. And here come all these Strider kids. Full factory. Dude, head to toe gear with their names, Moto helmets. They got stands for their bikes. Now, this was 3 years ago. It's like my son has never raced anything before. It's like, I don't want to do this. We're out. Like, I'm like, no, you got to do it. You got to try it. He went out and won. It was awesome. The best experience ever was this first BMX race. But if you find these BMX races, and even now the motocross races, like they'll do these indoor races, like indoor series. They always have a Strider class. They always have a Stasic class. And it's an awesome introduction to get them in the elements, you know, to get them around competition with 2 wheels, you know. So that was where things started for us. And the addiction started too, because all of a sudden I was addicted. Like I'm back home Googling, all right, where's the nearest BMX race? We're traveling 8+ hours to go to a BMX race for a Strider bike race, but this is what happens. And it's a problem in the sport because of how addicting it truly is. It's addicting.
Right.
When did you start racing a dirt bike?
I started at 10 years old, but I started racing 4-wheelers at 5. Yeah, so my parents got me going. Have you ever heard of Sleepy Hollow and Pine Grove?
Yes, of course.
So those 2 tracks were the only tracks that had the quad.
Yeah.
And we would just go every other weekend back and forth.
That's awesome.
And it was about like an hour and 10, hour and a half from where I grew up. And we were hooked, just like everyone else. I mean, you get bit by this bug, and it's just like an addiction, you know? And
Now, how were your parents growing up with that? Because if you're traveling a couple hours, you're spending money on equipment, you're invested, right? So how, and then also the flip side of that is, how were you as a kid? Were you hyper competitive? Were your parents hyper competitive? What was the dynamic there?
Well, my parents got my sister and I, my older sister and I started. My older sister probably was not as competitive. I was very competitive. That was always, you know, my vibe, right? Yeah. My dad got started and then got my younger sister started. And, you know, my dad never, they were like very supportive, but they weren't very like School of Hard Knocks. Like they weren't like that type of, you know, take it too serious. I was the one that wanted to take it serious. That's just, it's not for everybody, but like I enjoyed taking it serious. So there's actually been times in my teenage years where my dad wished that I didn't take it as serious. So that was how. I don't really remember negative when I was young. You know, 5 years old, 10 years old. I always remembered, you know, go get him, Tiger. You know, on the line, he would hold it up, and I would like, you know, because they don't have clean it out, and that would always get your, you know, adrenaline going, and. You know, there's vaguely, I remember a few incidents with riders, and, you know, there's passion involved with racing, right? No, no right or wrong, but, you know, there's incidents here and there. But, you know, I don't really remember, like, negative. One time I quit when I was younger, and I do remember that. I remember my dad, I was having a hissy fit out on the track, and... I can't remember why. I think maybe it wasn't fast enough. I don't really know, but he went out, grabbed me off of the quad, threw me into the trailer, and I remember that. It must have been significant enough, and he was like, if you quit again, like, you're never going to race again, you're done. And it's like an event like that, right? It sticks with you forever. And I'm glad he did that. I mean, there's some, you know, key moments that you know, build your character and stick with you. So I'm glad he did that.
And I think it's important to, you know, I think that's one of my biggest pet peeves in this sport is it's any sport really. Is you've got to listen to the kid, right? So do I get mad at TJ? For sure. If you go out and you just mail it in and you know he can do better, when he comes in, I'm bummed. And I'll tell him, like, dude, I'm seriously bummed right now that you went out and did that. But he's like, whatever. Like, you went out and got last, like, in front of all your buddies. And he's literally like, whatever. So you got to take a chill pill and, like, relax. Like, that's not his mentality. Because when I was a kid, I had the same mentality. I was scared, right? But my dad was very much a driving force in whole shot, go win. Like, and it was to a fault for both of us, because when I was on 60s, I quit. I stopped racing with my best friends, you know, Brian Bagley, you know, Andy Matthew was in that age group. Like, these are kids that I never got to experience a full life with motocross, because I was pushed so hard and I was just pushed away from it. And sometimes I'll see little glimpses of that happening with me and Travis, and I really have to pull back. And I have to say, you know what, like, and then, you know, like, Supercross at Minios, he's out there racing, he's out there doing his thing, and I'm like, man, he's riding like garbage. Like, this sucks. That night, I get some photos from Cole Beach of him riding, and these photos are just like, he's in perfect body position.
Looks good.
He's like hanging off the bike, and I'm like, my kid is having the time of his life. Like, I need to relax. I need to chill. Like, let him do his thing, because it's all about the mentality. The kids that are getting top 20 in his class want it. They want it. And if they don't want it, their parents want it bad enough that they want it, right? Yeah. So if we're getting 30th, 35th, and he's having the time of his life, I'm like, all right, because I want him to have a long life with his buddies racing dirt bikes, you know?
At the end of the day, the father and son it's an interesting dynamic, right? And as a coach, like, it's a slippery slope, because there's multiple ways to be a dad. There's multiple methods to, you know, how you go about doing your racing. And it's natural for a parent to be frustrated, especially when you don't see 100%. That's a given. But if they're giving 100%, you know, keeping it in perspective, like you said, sometimes you just have to reflect, take a step back. You know, the money being spent, you know, I remember racing Winter Ams, and I was at Gatorback, I think, and, you know, it has me thinking about, you know, you're talking about mini O's, and there's only one winner. There's only a couple people in the field that are progressing forward, and maybe if they're 15th or getting 10th place, there's only a handful of guys that are leaving the race, the moto, happy.
Yeah.
Where does that leave everyone else? You can't have the mentality that if you don't win, if you're not progressing every time, taking a step back, remembering that it's for fun.
Yeah.
And it's all a developmental stage. If TJ wants to become a professional, he could become a professional. Later on down the road, if his, if things can change. Like right now, even at every level at that race, it's a developmental stage. It's not an end result. There's not, a long-term factory, whatever.
And that's what I've learned more and more going through this process, right? Let's say 3 years into being a moto dad.
Yep.
I have learned more than anything that these are developmental classes.
Yeah.
And they should be looked at like that. And they're not.
Yeah.
They're not. On a national level, the moto dads that are in staging with us, because I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, like I like talking to people, they won't even talk to me. They won't even acknowledge that we exist because they are so channeled on this AMA #1 plate for a 50cc 4 to 6 shaft drive class, right? And the more I do this, the more I realize that's a development class. 65s, 85s. Like these are development classes that are teaching, and I think NASCAR has that mentality with their coming through the ranks. Like a kart championship doesn't mean to these kids what an AMA #1 plate means in a shaft drive. I had the father of one of the fastest kids in the country on a PW50. I had a conversation with him, and he told me, he said, we're shopping around for contracts right now. And in my head I'm thinking, you're riding a PW50 in the 4 to 6 class. You got a couple AMA #1 plates. What do you get for contracts for that? Like, is that a real thing? I don't know. I have no idea.
I'm a little bit disconnected too. Is there?
Is that a real thing? Are you pulling a contract for bikes for something out of that class when really what you should be doing is having fun and teaching this kid how to deal with the highs and the lows of the sport?
Exactly.
Because winning a couple of championships on a PW50, you could be in for 5 years of just bad luck and torture. That's how this sport works.
Yeah, and there's so many aspects to our sport. Shopping around for a contract. That's talk to Ziggy about something like that. Does he care about a whatever? Right.
I know.
You should be establishing long-term relationships. Brand loyalty.
Yep.
If you go to, if KTM, if you jump back and forth every year or every other year, you're just going to race something because you're getting a better deal. That's not going to, in the long run, pay off. You're shooting yourself in the foot.
And how many times?
Wrong message.
And how many times have I been told or heard stories of moto parents, dads or moms, ruining opportunities for their kids because of this stuff? It happens so much.
Yeah, it's a shame.
But that's kind of a tale for a different day, and different stories. Let's kind of get back to the next step. Okay, so we've talked about these Strider bikes. We've talked about these Stasic bikes. We've talked about the opportunity to be able to ride and race them. So to have competitive, like there are some kids that race Stasic bikes that are like full blown, like legit racers, very competitive on a Stasic bike, and they have these awesome races for them. Moto, our company, we run races every week at Heman's Motocross Park for these kids to come out and race, and we're getting like 80, 90 entries.
It's so cool.
It's crazy. It's awesome. But what we need to be more conscious of is like, how do we transition them from there? And there are a couple of cool ways to do that. They make really awesome like electric trials bikes. Those are something really cool to look into. Andy Matthew, who's a good friend of mine, has gone that route with his son Cruz, because Andy is very much a technique rider, all about the fundamentals. And it's almost who was it? I think it was Roger DeCoster that used to say, the reason that I'm able to go faster than everybody else is that I'm able to go slower than everybody else. So he has the talents to be able to balance this bike and do these things, and that's a cool option, especially electric, because you can ride it in your backyard. You can do these cool things with it. The route that we went, because we didn't really know where else to go, was the PW50. Training wheels. We had training wheels. Yep. We did not use a governor on the throttle. How
do you do with it?
I am anti-governor, because all it does is teach your kid how to hold it wide open.
Yeah. Actually, I never thought of that before. That's
all it does.
Yeah, right?
It's wide open, right? So what we did was we focused, when we had the training wheels, on the throttle control. And still to this day, my son's throttle control is better than the ignition point of his clutches on his dirt bikes. He can out throttle control his clutch hitting, and I go through clutches because of it. I can't talk him out of it. I want him to, funny. But he does. Yeah. He'll outwork the clutch, and because it's an automatic clutch, he can keep it in that. Yeah. Oh man, does that make me mad?
That's funny.
Man, does it make me mad? But we worked on throttle control so that when we did take the training wheels off, because what's the one story you hear from everybody on a PW50? I've got the story. All my friends have the story.
The
whiskey throttle into a tree, into a bush. Everybody does it. So he had this throttle control down, and it made it so much easier to get rid of the training wheels and have them ride. So easy that he learned to ride on this little, on our front lawn, which is tiny. It's not built for riding a dirt bike. So like for me, that's my biggest kind of piece of advice. Training wheels on a PW50, let them learn the throttle.
The Stasic, that probably helped with throttle control, I would imagine.
We didn't have a Stasic.
Oh right, because that's a new thing.
They were just starting to come out with those. I wish we had one.
Right.
But we didn't have that option.
I will say, in like all of my riding schools, I always say like, hey, who here has ever gotten whiskey throttle? And I don't believe you if you say no. Like I think that happens, at least once. But that's a really cool. I never thought about the governor thing.
You know how bad whiskey throttle scares me? I still ride a YZ125.
Yeah.
I will swear by it. Yeah, for a vet rider, there's all these vet riders. This isn't a vet show, but for all these vet riders, say the factory edition 450.
Yeah.
What are you doing to yourself?
Yeah.
Like get a YZ125 and like go have fun.
I hear you.
But so beyond the PW50, right? And again, technology is getting better and better and better. The one bike that we got for TJ that probably ruined him over everything else is that E50, the electric 50. The throttle response is incredible. The mapping on it is so consistent. The suspension, everything about this bike ruined him as a rider, and we had to spend less time on it. But for a rider to have a kid learn how to ride on a dirt bike, these electric dirt bikes are everything. Everything.
Right. Yeah, I've heard similar stories with that, and you could see, maybe it's a good stepping stone. It's a nice class to race, but then long term, when we talk about like the developmentally, if he goes and spends too much time on that and then jumps on a 65, like, oh man, that's scary, right? Power band and shifting. And
another cool thing, so his other bike that he races is a KTM 50. It's a gas powered 50 with the automatic clutch, but there's still a clutch there. So the transition between going from this automatic clutch when it warms up, the differences that where it hits, because that bike changes in a moto, right? From the start to the finish, that bike is warming up, it's doing different things. With the e-bike, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think by the time we get to 65s, this is my opinion, we're going to have an E65 to ride. I honestly think that.
That would be sweet.
It would be sweet, but it's, you know, again, there's a lot of people out there that say we're destroying the sport with that. But man, the opportunity to ride this electric 50, he rides it at the house every night.
Nice.
You know, we built, did you see our whoop video? Him riding the whoops? We
So.
built a nasty set of whoops, and the suspension on this thing and everything about the bike, he looked pro going through the whoops. Like, he hit these whoops perfect.
That's sweet.
And he rides every night. We live in a neighborhood. He rides this thing every night in the neighborhood.
Nobody can, yeah.
And you can't beat it. We can go to skate parks with it. We can
Really?
Oh, yeah. We can do whatever we want. Because, you know, one, I'm pretty okay at talking to cops when they, you know, but two, it's, you know, that there's no noise, you know, so.
That's awesome.
That's one of my suggestions for getting into this is look at all the options, because depending on what you want to do, you know, these little trials bikes are amazing. I can't remember who makes them, but they're little electric trials bikes. They're awesome. There's the PW50, you know, when you start to get into these race bikes, they're very high maintenance. They're very unpredictable. Yeah. They're very difficult to maintain because you're dealing with these clutches that, you know, stators, everything about them. It's just a pain. And it's up to what the kid wants to do. There's a lot of people that I have personal friends that get into it, and both of their kids will race, and they will spend 20 grand, get it, the best bikes at the track every single weekend, and in 1 year, they're done. Done
with the sport?
Done with the sport entirely. Sell everything. The kids never want to touch a dirt bike again. There's a fine line between this passion thing and ruining it. And it's incredible when you see it happen. You don't expect it, but it happens, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I see it. You know, we all see it when you get upset, you know, at your kid and it's a negative thing. That's really not gonna, you know, last. But yeah, that's unfortunate. That's what we need to try to steer away from. And yeah.
And there's the injury side of things too. Knock on wood, we haven't dealt with much of it, but you know, there are a lot of kids, and I will never name names when I say this, but there are a lot of kids that will smoke my son in a race. And I would never, I'd pull my kid back into the trailer and scream at him for riding that way, because they're in the wrong body position. They're way off, but they are just holding it wide open. Yeah. And for me, you know, I got to spend a lot of time at MTF. I lived at MTF for a few years. I've been around these talented riders, and I've seen that step number one in motocross is slowing down to go faster. Yeah. It's step one, and it has to be step one from the ground level. I never let Travis ride his PW50 unless he was in the right body position, unless he was on the balls of his feet, he was standing, and he was in attack position.
Yeah,
you can go back right now. I'll show you photos of TJ when he was a peanut, 3 years old on a dirt bike, but he was in the right body position. Because going to a race like Gatorback, and let's say he does get excited, and he does want to go out and get a top 5. Well, you better be ready, because you talked about the claws.
Yeah, they're real for sure. Maybe even gators and all that too down in there. So, you know, what you're saying with like one of the hurdles that we have in our sport is it's an extreme sport, the danger side of it, right? Yeah. And when you talk about like slow down to go fast, like rule number 1, like I say the same thing, just a little different. Everyone's number one objective, whether it's your first day, whether you're Deegan, everyone talks about him, whether you're Tomac, is to stay healthy.
Yeah.
You have to stay healthy.
Yeah.
I had a string of injuries like when I was about 15, 16, and my mentor was like, listen, you need to stay healthy because if you keep on this path, you're going to be done. And, you're not going to want to do it. Your parents are not going to want to do it. You're not going to be able to afford to do it. There's all these, purple weenies that are throwing at you that are going to deter you away from the sport. So, when we look at the safety aspect, when you don't ride, if your technique isn't above your speed, you're not a step ahead of the negative reaction. So if your technique is always above your speed, you're a step ahead of the negative reactions. So you're going to be you're smooth. You're slowing down to go fast. You're smooth. You're not making those mistakes. When you analogy that I always use at my schools is picture a wheel. We all have them, front and a back wheel. A wheel consists of many spokes. Think about those spokes as different subjects of the sport. And if you had 4 spokes on that wheel and you put it on that bike, do you think it's going to last very long? And, no, it's not going to last. It's not going to give you what you need to do. And I see it all the time where, say you have, you're pretty good at jumping, you're pretty good at throttle control, you're pretty good at body positioning, you're pretty good at cornering. That's just 4 things. It sounds like a lot, but it's just 4 things. There's a lot of components. If you just go out there and say, I'm pretty good at that, forget the rest and not have the appreciation to keep learning and developing, we're not wrong by saying it's a dangerous sport, because if you go out there and you ride with 4 subjects decent and that's it, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's too dangerous at that point.
It really
now
is.
If you go out there and you've identified 20 different components subject to the sport, and you keep working on that, now you have you're working on the safety, the longevity, and you're going to get the results that you need. Still at that point, no matter what, you have all the right equipment, training, technique, and you're still gonna crash. You're still gonna have bumps and bruises, but it's significantly gonna decrease, right? And at that point, our sport is amazing. The positives definitely outweigh the negatives. But if you go out there, like you were just talking about, some of the kids that just go out there and they don't think and they just do this, they just twist the throttle. It's too dangerous at that point, and it's gonna significantly decrease their chances of being in it long term. And we need to move past that stigma of, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson that know nothing about the sport. We need to model, the rider that rides with the technique, and not the rider that's getting hurt every year and done in 5 years. Or, looking at the pros, the pros are models of the sport as well. And, you don't want to have a broken bone, broken home type of mentality.
Well, what's your favorite pro when you're watching? The flashy guy, right?
Yep.
The guy that's on the edge, right? The guy that's winning.
Right.
Now, he's doing that with a foundation beyond what I would ever dream of having, but it's still, the sport is portrayed as, you want to hang off the side of the bike, you want to do these things,
right.
I want to scrub. Okay, well, I've been racing a long time. I don't want to scrub. I know what goes into that. Yeah,
but an advanced rider can scrub 1,000 times and not have an issue. Then a C rider that thinks it's cool can do that same scrub 50 times and have a crash and get hurt. So its technique is everything, even with the flash and the whip and all that. I mean, there are some exceptions to everything, but
What would you, if you had green as green can be, mom and dad?
Yeah.
Let's say it's a mom, because that's who hits me up all the time. I don't know what it is about this sport, but the moms want their kids to do this. They want them to race dirt bikes, right? Let's say they hit you up. Let's say they call you or message you. What's your first big piece of advice for them? Let's say they have a 4, 5, 6-year-old and they want their kid to race.
Well, if they're gonna come to me and say they want to race, we'll talk about the options for what their environment is. You know, do they have a field? That's one of the first questions that I ask. Do they have a field somewhere where they could ride, or do they have to solely rely on going to a track?
Yeah.
And if they want to race, I do advocate for more of a racer end bike. But my second question, I'm getting ahead of myself, is I ask them, do they do any sports? What type of son or son or daughter? What type of kid do you have? Is he pretty athletic? You know, has he ridden a bicycle yet? You know, and those type of things are okay. If they're not as athletic, we want to put them on the easiest, most mellow version. But if they're eager, no, we want to be racing as soon as possible. Maybe we with the proper training, find a coach, go out into a field, get the throttle control done out of the way, not close to a tree or a fence or a hole. So it really depends on the type of
so to follow that up,
the type of rider.
You're a pro athlete. You are a pro supercross rider. Would you take those clients on? Are you open to those calls?
Oh, absolutely. That type of grassroots, that's the same thing. I mean, there's no type of Kool-Aid type of thing like, oh no, I've been in the sport a long time, I just want to work on staying light over the bumps. I'm fine with working on the very basic stuff, awesome. And everything stems from the basics, and it's really cool to see somebody have a positive experience with the sport and hopefully get into it. That's what we all need to do, because the people in the sport love it, right? We all love it. We have we bleed it, and we want to see it grow. In order to do that, we need to be the advocate for it. So
we're definitely not getting rich off of it, so we gotta bleed it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've given you my most recent kind of Moto dad story from Minios that really kind of blew my mind. Is there any that stick out to you from being at the track, from seeing? You don't have to name names, but is there a Moto dad story that you've seen that kind of sticks out as like, either eye-opening or somebody that you've seen do something really positive? What is it? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, so we can. So I would rather talk about the positive, because obviously there's some negatives where you just shake your head or you see these weird dynamics that are unhealthy. But in general, a moto family, if you're broken down on the side of the road, they're gonna come help you. Like I talked to my mom a couple of days ago. I told her I was gonna do this podcast with you, and we were reminiscing on some of the beginning days, and she was talking to us like we didn't have a lot of resources back then. You didn't we're talking 1995, 1996. You didn't show up with big rigs or three like like my first helmet. I think we put like a towel on my head. It was a little bucket. There were concussion buckets back then. It definitely wasn't the same, but she was just saying, it was about if you were broken down and you had the part, you helped that other person. Yeah. Even if they were faster than you, it wasn't like, oh, he's down, so I'm going to get a better trophy. Like there's just so many the camaraderie that you get. It's an individual sport when you're on the track, which I think is great for character building, confidence. But when you're off the track, going into I remember being, in the dirt, playing with your competitors, like and you're with your family every, so just in general, just getting that type of, that out and that language to the green, the Mr. and Mrs. Johnson that don't know anything about it. I mean, it's such a cool community. That's how we did it. We did it in a conversion van. Me and my parents, and it was bologna sandwiches every night. We'd drive all night to Southwick, eat a bologna sandwich. Nice. I would go race the next day on my PW50 at Southwick, which meant my parents did half the racing, pushing me up the hills. So
It is, and we honestly like our family. We look at it as a camping trip. That's what it is. It's what we're doing. It's a vacation. We're camping. We're together, and they are lucky. Like my son goes to bed every night in a $40,000 toy hauler.
Yeah.
Like, and guess what? We're the broke ones at the track. Like
Yeah.
we're legit. We're the poor
Yeah.
ones, dude. We're rolling
It's
in with this
insane, huh?
beautiful like toy hauler that we have. It's kind of the coolest thing I've ever owned.
Yeah.
And we're the broke ones, Like I'm like, okay, but these kids don't know how good they have it. But still, they get to do those grassroots things. They get to play in the dirt with their friends, and build relationships. My kids have relationships now with people from all over the country: California, Georgia, New York,
How sweet
and
is
these
that?
are relationships that are never going to, they're never going to lose.
Exactly.
Man,
It's
we've
really
talked about a
cool.
lot. I got to check my notes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super cool how a common interest and a common passion can bring people that you wouldn't typically know. I have lifelong friends that do different things for work, just totally different people, but we're like close friends, and we'll be close friends for life.
Yep.
Just because of the common passion, the common interest of dirt bike racing.
We went
pretty
to
neat.
Kawasaki Race of Champions this year, and we knew no one. Like, we went there by ourselves. We planned it by ourselves. Like, we're not going down with people. We want to do our thing. When we left there, both my son and my daughter had amazing friends that we had never met before. That's awesome. Yeah, so it was really, really cool. So that's the sport. It's a testament to the sport. Man,
you gotta try it. You gotta try it if you're new.
From here, I don't know where we go from here. We've talked about kind of introducing into the sport. I think it's important to know, and you kind of alluded to it, that getting on a dirt bike or two wheels does not mean that you have to race. It does not mean that you have to start taking this so seriously. There are so many great opportunities for trail riding and for just riding with friends in the field. There are so many opportunities, but it all stems from two wheels, and that's where our passion is. I think we find ourselves too trying to funnel people into this race form all the time that we shouldn't.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a race is organized practice, and when you're brand new, you're not going to get as much seat time. It's also intimidating. So just to take it one step at a time is positive, and utilize your resources. You were talking about the network that we've established for TJ, which is amazing. As soon as you click on something dirt bike related on social media, you'll find other, dirt bike related posts, and you can message, you can find a coach.
Mm-hmm.
You can find a coach in your area on motorcyclecoaching.org. They'll be able to steer you in the right direction, and just try to befriend people. Go to a track, and talk to people. For the most part, the moto cross community and the motor cycle community, they're all nice people, down to earth. Just like everybody. I mean, there's certain people within every crowd that are maybe, arrogant or cocky or whatever. But if you walk around the pits, you'll be able to find nice people. Ask them. Now you have a friend. You have somebody that's unbiased, that's not going to try to sell you something. And that's a recommendation that I would go to. Google the local track. Go watch, support the track, and get your foot in the door there.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is this really is such a cool community, and unlike any that you'll find, any place else. There's totally. You do, like you said, you do have those people that are, definitely out for themselves and trying to get ahead of everybody else. But for the most part, it's community driven. Even at the national races, there are a few parents that, are taking it really seriously and they don't want to get into conversations, but there are some amazing guys. Like TJ has a couple of kids that race in his class, the Lloyds, Boone and Tripp. They're from Virginia, I think. And
Sounds familiar.
man, their dad is the nicest guy ever, and I talk to him at every race, and I was talking to him at the last race, and he's even asking me, he's like, you do football, or, you know, because he's from the South.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, no, we don't do football yet. He goes, well, the boys do football, and he was telling me, you know, he played football. I said, well, no way, you know, where'd you play football? I said, Virginia Tech, and I just kind of, my eyes got big. Virginia Tech. He goes, yeah, I was a left tackle, and he's a big guy, and I'm like, okay, well, remind me not to get into an argument with you. But
awesome.
like, there's some really awesome guys from all kinds of different walks of life, and you know what I guess kind of my last question would be, is there any advice you have for, because I have really good friends that their kids race that they never raced, right? So like, is there any advice you have for the guys that have never raced motocross? And I'm not talking about competition. Racing motocross is not like any other sport. It really isn't. Like, there's no other feeling like it. And sometimes, you know, personally, my experience is I see the disconnect from some of these, you know, some of these parents to their kids, on they just don't understand what that means. I'll give you a good case in point. Yeah. TJ came in from practice at Minio's, okay, and he's kind of being quiet. I'm like, what's going on, bud? And he goes, Dad, I'm scared. And I was like, dude, I'm scared too. Like, I'm legitimately scared too. Funny. Like, I get it, because I was down there and nervous at the same time he was nervous, you know? But is there some piece of advice you'd give to the parent that hasn't raced? Besides go out and do it yourself, because a lot of these guys don't, like, that's a pipe dream, you know?
Right. Like, well, first of all, I mean, what TJ did was exactly what you should do. The first step to solving the problem is to identify what it is. I actually had a mother call me last week, and they're from New Hampshire. Yep. And first year racing, he rips at his home. They have a track at their house. He goes to the arena cross, and he's like scared. He's totally different. Okay, you know what? We just need to talk to him. Like, what we need to identify. What's making you nervous? You know, okay, you're scared. TJ's scared. Let's take it one. That's great. Let's take it one step further. What are you the most scared? Let's talk about 1, 2, or 3 things that you're most scared about. Is it the start? Is it the people watching you? Is it, because then you can put keywords in his head, and you can figure out a game plan to kind of move past that. And then that's another like character building, you know, situation. But one advice is,
oh my God.
Are we good?
Go ahead.
The advice that I would give to a parent that has never done it is, they need to classify a successful lap, moto, race day, for where their son or daughter is at that given moment. If you give it 100%, we can only go out there, even if happens to be a race, and we can only get better ourselves, whatever we are, you know, and not get caught up in what the other riders are doing. Because if another rider that has more talent, more experience goes by, they don't understand why that rider, he can't just twist the throttle more and brake harder and do that same thing. They just don't understand. And it's not going, it's hard. It looks way easier than what it is. You know.
And I still have that myself. That's my main disappointment with not being able to grow up with the pro riders that are my best friends, is because when we ride now, they're gone. And I still, in my head, I don't get it, right? I can ride a dirt bike fairly well. Like, I'm a mid-pack B rider, probably. I can't compute how to go that fast. Like, but when I watch, you know, I'll watch my friends ride. I'm like, man, they look good. I can do that. Yeah, no problem. But then you're out there and you're like, okay, this is not the same.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, and it's great that you do it because you understand that aspect. But you could watch some of the fastest riders. I mean, I always talk about Ryan Dungey because he was like one of the smoothest.
Quiet,
quiet
on the bike.
And look at how amazingly fast. There's only a couple people that really can go that speed. I mean, maybe more than a couple people, but you get it, right? Just in general, riding a step at every level, if your technique is higher than your speed, you're going to be smooth. It's going to look easy. So it's all about getting better, improving your technique, and not just saying I need to twist the throttle more. There's so much to it. So just being patient with your student or not with your student, with your kid, your son being daughter. Be patient with them and grade them on where they were the previous lap, the previous moto. I've had to do that my whole career. Everybody has to do that. You could go and win your local race and you think it's great, but then you can go to a national, ride better, and finish 30th. And now all of a sudden your mentality is that you're all bummed out. No, if you did better at that race, you need to be proud and keep building on your performance. So you're your own rider, and everybody's everybody's journey is a little different. So
I've heard it said pretty good is on race day you're not going to find 3 to 5 seconds a lap. Oh. You're not gonna find it. And I have to constantly remind myself that too. Because some of these kids, even a 13, 14-year-old, you don't know who's showing up that day. Right? You don't know, that's not their career. You don't know who's showing up that day. So if they show up and they're just off pace because of something, you can't push through that sometimes. Sometimes you got to be like, all right, well, hey, we're here. Let's grow. Let's build.
Right. So. Yeah, totally. Because being the rider, I know from experience, some days you just, and you probably know too, some days it's just a little not right. Those aren't the days to try to push your best time. If you're not feeling right, if it's at the beginning of the day, if it's the end of the day, these are all like red zone areas that those aren't the times to push. There are times to push it. Yeah. This is where we need to go faster. This is where we need to push it and try to get to, another level. But being able to do that in the right moments is a key to staying safe and keeping it going. So trying to find that balance as a parent has to be hard. It has to be really tough when it's not you. It's
hard, and I will tell you, because obviously I've never raced on the professional level, so I don't know that feeling. But I know dirt bikes, and I know sitting on the line, and I know that anxiety. I know it very, very, very well. I will say, when you stand behind the gate with your son on the line the first time, times it by 2.
Really? That's cool. That's kind of exciting, but then terrifying.
It's terrifying. Yeah. And there are parents out there. I've been at races. We were at the regional, and a kid got run over by TJ. He fell. TJ fell. Kid fell in a rut and got run over. Oh, hard. The dad was standing behind us, started screaming at his kid to get up. Get up. Get back on the bike.
Dude, just take it chill.
And I was like, I looked at my wife, and she literally said immediately, she goes, "We're done. We're going home." She was mortified.
Because it's scary, right?
It's scary. Yeah. And some of these moto dads, they're beyond that. There's a disconnect. And I don't know how they possibly make that disconnect. And the only thing I can think of is maybe they just don't know. They don't understand getting run over by a dirt bike. It's gnarly.
I know it's way harder than it looks. Yeah. And it's easy to that's what makes it so deceiving, is it just looks easy. You're not the person on the bike. You're not going through, the high heart rate and the adrenaline and dealing with, arm pump, and, you have this, machine underneath you, and other bikes and track conditions changing. I mean, there's so much that goes on, and you're just on the sideline. It looks way easier. So I don't know. Every now and then I get a moto dad that's real heavy on the sideline, and then I just take a step back when I'm coaching. If they want to be the coach, they can be the coach.
Yeah,
but
that's
tough.
got to be hard from the coaching standpoint too. You know, but again, I don't want to scare people. This is a tough sport. This is intense at times, and it's scary. But I will tell you, this sport set me up to have a successful life in business, have a success, because, you know, you think about your kid racing a dirt bike, which is one of the hardest things to do. It's one of the hardest sports you can do. Okay, it's scary, It's intimidating. When your kid is walking into a college class for the first time, or walking into a business meeting, or trying to meet new people when they're going into business and building their own thing, I can tell you right now, I'm not scared of anybody. Yeah. Some of my best friends are multi-millionaires that I walked into their boardroom and I was like, hey, I'm Travis and I want to work with you. Yeah. And they've told me no, but you don't take no for an answer. All I'm saying is this sport sets you up for a life that is way easier than if you just kind of coasted through. You know,
totally agree.
I'm not saying anything bad about team sports, stick and ball, football, like any of those sports. There's nothing. It teaches you teamwork and all these amazing things also. But there's something about motocross that just like you can't teach these. You just, you know, you gave the story about your dad teaching you not to quit.
Yeah.
Whatever way he did it, whether it was negative and it stuck in your head as like that scared the crap out of me, or it was positive, you learned we don't quit. And I'll tell you right now, my son knows, doesn't matter what happens on the track, you don't quit. Yeah. And for sure, there are lessons that you learn through motocross. And that's what my hope is for some of these moto parents is look at this as development. Look at what you're building. It's not about going out and winning or who you're beating or being the best in the state or in the region or in the country. It is not about that. It is about building little powerhouses that can go out into a world that's really messed up right now.
It's a tough world. And
I tell you what, if you have any bit of the values that you get from dirt bikes, you could be way ahead in this world. But it's about building that and building a foundation. Because one day, like I said, my son may want to go fast. And when he wants to go fast, he better have the skills to go fast.
And he will, because you're giving him the ability to build. When I see a big difference, if a rider starts when they're young, you know, let's just say like as a benchmark, like 5, 6, whatever, compared to like 15, 20, there's a big difference there. Like when they start young, they have way more just coordination, learning ability. It's a big difference than if they pick it up later on for the sport specifically. But at any level, I mean, I have students that get into it in their 40s, 50s. Yeah. But yeah, you know, going back to what you said, it's incredibly hard, humbling sport. You know, you pack your own parachute and you're in charge out there on the track, and there's highs and lows just like life. And you know, you have to I see it now with Easton. I mean, it's a hard life, it's a crazy world we live in, and he's gonna have to live and face it one day. And you know, you want to shelter him, but like you can't. Like he's got to be a survivor, and he's got to know how to do it, and to teach it young and using motocross as a tool. Yeah. What better way? Yeah. You know, it's sweet.
That's awesome. Well, from one moto dad to another almost moto dad, yeah. You're close. Thank you for drinking some beers with me.
Absolutely.
And chatting about dirt bikes. Again, motorcyclecoaching.org.
Sure.
And you can even schedule some coaching with Ronnie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Patramoto, we have Craig Mishu, who's a coach that runs classes out of Maine, but it's available all over the country. And whether you're just starting out or trying to get to the next level and be the next big name, motorcyclecoaching.org is a really cool place to start for that. We don't have sponsors. If you like the show, share it.
Yeah.
Tell us if you like the show. Again, hopefully it's not a one and done. Hopefully we can keep talking to really cool people, meet new people, talk to some awesome moto dads out there. There's a million ways to do this sport, but there's also a million ways to do it wrong, and we want to kind of right the ship. So, any last words?
Well, thanks for having me on. I'm for all things moto, so it's like I want to see this take off, and I'll support it and share it through my channels and network. And that's it. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thank you guys for listening.